I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
This is The Godfather, an iconic movie adored by millions of film lovers through the decades.
Go outside, enjoy yourself.
But this story began its journey from the pages of a book. This is Things Fall Apart, a classic of African literature that has gone round the world via translations and through the big screen. In this edition of the Successful Filmmaker podcast, we unravel the hidden secrets of successful book-to-screen adaptation.
Lights, camera, action.
Welcome back to Successful Filmmaker. For today's deep dive, we're kind of stepping into a world that's, I think, practically a film lover's playground. We're talking book-to-film adaptations. And we'll be kind of exploring, I guess, what they are and their history and the reasons why people just keep coming back to them, the benefits, the challenges, all that good stuff.
Yeah, I think what's really fascinating about this topic is that it's not just like putting a book on screen, right? It's about capturing the soul of the story, you know what I mean? And translating it into a whole other sensory experience.
Okay, so before we kind of jump ahead of ourselves here, let's start with the basics. When we say book-to-film adaptations, what are we talking about here?
Well, it's really the art of taking a written work. And that could be anything, a novel, a short story, a play, whatever, and then you reimagine it for the screen. So it's about building that bridge between, you know, the world of literature and the world of cinema.
So you're saying it's not just like a direct copy-paste situation?
No, not at all. I mean, it's really about transformation. Imagine taking those characters and those settings that were once just, you know, stuck on the page, and suddenly, bam, you see them come alive with visuals, sound, motion. It adds a whole new dimension to the storytelling.
That makes sense. Now, adaptations, they've been around for a while, right? I mean, we're not exactly reinventing the wheel here.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, the whole idea of adapting books for the screen goes all the way back to the very early days of cinema. I mean, one of the earliest examples, I think, is Georges Méliès's silent film Cinderella from 1899, and that was based on the classic fairy tale.
Wow, 1899. That's taking it old school, huh?
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? And as filmmaking technology kind of got better and better, so did the complexity and the frequency of adaptations.
Right, we saw stories unfold on a grander scale. They used techniques that really pushed the boundaries of visual storytelling.
And, you know, some of the most iconic films in history are adaptations, right? Absolutely. Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, those became cultural touchstones, you know?
Yeah.
They captured the hearts of audiences, and it proved the power of bringing beloved stories to the screen.
It's amazing to think that those early adaptations really paved the way for what we see today. And you know, this isn't just a Hollywood thing, is it? I feel like it's a universal fascination with stories. They cross borders.
Right. Good stories, they transcend cultures and languages. Just look at the impact, the global impact of films like The Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, The Godfather. You know, those adaptations really resonated with audiences all around the world, and it just demonstrates the power of a well-crafted narrative to connect with people from all walks of life.
And even here in Nigeria, we have our own rich history of adaptations, especially from those early days of Nigerian cinema.
Yeah, for sure. You think about films like Kongi's Harvest, based on the play by Wole Soyinka, or the 1971 adaptation of Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. And these films were really significant milestones in Nigerian cinema. They reflected our own cultural narratives up on the big screen.
You know, speaking of Things Fall Apart, it's interesting how that's been adapted so many times over the years, including a version for television back in the 1980s. And it just shows you how powerful that story is, right?
Absolutely. And there are others, like the TV adaptation of Abubakar Imam's Magana Jarise, also in the 1980s. These adaptations highlight the profound role literature plays in shaping Nigerian culture. And it shows how these stories continue to find new life and new audiences through film.
Okay, so we've established that adaptations have a long and global history. But what is it about them that keeps audiences coming back for more? I mean, why are we so drawn to seeing these books come to life on the screen?
Well, I think part of it is the whole visual and auditory experience that film offers, right? I mean, when we read a book, it engages our imaginations. But film, it takes it a step further. Those characters, those settings, they become tangible. You see them, you hear them, you feel like you're stepping right into the world that was once just on the page.
Yeah, it's like a difference between dreaming about a place and actually going there.
Exactly. And for many fans, adaptations offer a chance to see their favorite stories, but reinterpreted through a new lens. How will the characters look? How will certain scenes play out? It's a way to revisit something familiar and experience it with fresh eyes and ears.
So it's like peeking into someone else's imagination, and you get to see how they envision that same story. But we can't deny that sometimes adaptations, they miss the mark.
Yep.
Sometimes they just don't capture the magic of the book.
That's true. Adapting a book into a film comes with its own set of advantages and disadvantages, and it's a delicate balancing act to get it right.
Okay, so let's talk about those advantages first. What are some of the things that make adaptations so appealing to filmmakers?
Well, one major advantage is that you have a built-in audience.
Right.
Popular books, they often come with a passionate fan base. And those fans, they're eager to see their beloved stories up on the big screen. This is a huge asset for filmmakers because it generates buzz and anticipation even before the film is released.
So it's like a head start in the marketing game.
Exactly. You're not starting from scratch. And beyond the fan base, books offer filmmakers, I think, a wealth of source material. You have a detailed plot, you've got well-developed characters. Often, you've got rich dialogue that you can draw from. It's a goldmine of inspiration for crafting a screenplay.
So it's not just about attracting fans, it's about having a solid foundation for the narrative, right?
Precisely. And then there's the potential for cultural impact. I mean, a successful adaptation, it can elevate both the book and the film. It introduces a whole new generation to a classic story. It can spark conversations and sometimes even inspire further creative works.
So it's a win-win for both literature and cinema. It's like they feed off of each other.
You could say that. However, we do have to remember that adaptations also come with challenges.
This is where it gets really interesting. What are some of the pitfalls that filmmakers should watch out for when they're tackling an adaptation?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is the issue of creative constraints.
Right.
A book can have hundreds of pages, intricate subplots, a cast of characters that rivals a small town, and then you try to squeeze all of that into a 2-hour film. It's like trying to fit an ocean into a teacup.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Right.
Staying true to the essence of the book, but also making the changes you need for the screen. It sounds pretty tricky.
It is. It requires a really delicate touch. And sometimes filmmakers feel this pressure to cram every little detail from the book into the film. And actually, that can end up kind of diluting the impact of the story on screen. The key is to find those core elements, the themes, the character arcs, the moments that really drive the narrative, and you build the film around those.
So it's about choosing your battles, I guess, knowing what to keep and what to let go of.
Exactly. And those decisions, they can be tough, especially when you're working with a book that has a really devoted fan base. I mean, each reader has their own vision of how the story should unfold. You can't please everyone.
I imagine that managing audience expectations is a whole other challenge.
Oh, absolutely. Fans often have very specific ideas about how the characters should look, how the story should be paced, even what the music should sound like. And if the film deviates too much from that, their imagined version, well, it can lead to disappointment, even backlash.
Almost like there's a ghost version of the film living in their heads.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And sometimes, those expectations are just impossible to replicate on screen. Film is a different medium than literature. It has its own language. It has its own way of telling stories.
So how do filmmakers navigate that? I mean, how do they balance their own vision with the expectations of those fans?
Well, I think open communication is key. Engaging with the fan base, listening to their concerns, being transparent about the choices you're making. I think all of that can go a long way in managing those expectations and building excitement for the adaptation.
You want the fans to feel like they're part of the process, not just watching from the sidelines.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it's important to remember that an adaptation isn't supposed to be a carbon copy of the book. It's a reinterpretation, a new lens through which to experience the story.
So it's about embracing the differences, seeing them as part of that creative process.
Precisely. And speaking of challenges, let's not forget about the legal hurdles that often come with adaptations.
Yes, the legal side of things. I bet that can be a whole other can of worms.
It can be, yeah. Securing the rights to adapt a book, it often involves a whole maze of negotiations with authors, publishers, estates. It can be a really complex and lengthy process.
So even before you get to the creative part, there's a whole legal groundwork you have to lay.
Absolutely. And, sometimes those rights can be tied up in complicated agreements, or there might be multiple parties involved. It can get messy.
So it sounds like navigating the legal landscape is just as important as mastering the creative side of things.
It's an absolutely essential part of the process. And even beyond securing the rights, you know there are other legal things to keep in mind, like making sure you're not infringing on any copyrights or securing clearances for music or other copyrighted material. It's a multi-layered process, creatively and legally.
It really makes you appreciate the amount of work that goes into making these adaptations.
It does, but when all the pieces come together, when that creative vision aligns with the spirit of the book and all the legal hurdles are cleared, the results, well, they can be magical.
I bet it's incredibly rewarding. You know, to see a story that you're passionate about come to life on screen, to witness those characters and worlds you once imagined, well, they become real.
There's nothing quite like it. And a successful adaptation, it can have a ripple effect. You know, introducing a new audience to a story they love, sparking those important conversations, and even inspiring a whole new generation of readers and filmmakers.
So it's about keeping those stories alive, allowing them to evolve and reach new heights.
You said it. That's what makes the whole journey worthwhile.
Now we've talked about the challenges. Let's shift gears for a moment and focus on the positive side of things. What are some of the things that filmmakers can do to set themselves up for success when they're adapting a book to film?
I'd say one of the most crucial steps is choosing the right book. It's not just about picking a title that's popular. You need a story with a strong structure, compelling characters, and most importantly, cinematic potential.
What exactly does cinematic potential mean?
Well, it means a story that lends itself well to visual storytelling. It has scenes that can be vividly imagined on the screen, sequences that would translate well from page to moving images, and of course, there needs to be a personal connection. The filmmaker, they need to feel a spark, a passion for bringing that story to life.
It's all about that initial spark, the one that gets the whole creative process going.
Exactly. And once you have that book, assembling the right team is just as important. You need a talented screenwriter who gets the source material, but also the craft of screenwriting. You need a director with vision, someone who can bring their own unique perspective to the project. And of course, a skilled production team to execute that vision.
So basically, you're putting together a dream team of storytellers.
Exactly. And throughout the entire process, keeping those lines of communication open. You know, between the filmmakers, the author, if they're involved, and the studio. That can help prevent misunderstandings and make sure everyone is on the same page.
It's all about having a collaborative environment where everyone feels heard and respected.
Absolutely. And finally, you have to remember that an adaptation, it's a work of art in its own right. It's not just a derivative of the book, it's a new creation, you know? One that builds on the foundation of the original story.
It's like paying homage to the source material, but also letting it breathe, letting it evolve.
Well said. That's what makes adaptations so exciting. They offer a fresh perspective, a new way to experience a familiar story.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive, from the step-by-step process of adaptation to all the creative and legal challenges. But before we wrap up this part, I'd love to hear from our listeners.
Ooh, good idea. Let's get them involved.
Thinking back to all the book-to-film adaptations you've seen, what are some of the elements that really stood out to you? What made those adaptations truly successful? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
We'll be back shortly to wrap up our exploration of this fascinating world of book-to-film adaptations. Stick around, we'll jump right back in where we left off.
This podcast is brought to you by WakaCast.
Connecting talents and creators in Africa.
And we are back for the final part of our deep dive. We've been exploring the world of book-to-film adaptations.
It's been a fascinating journey, really. From those early silent films, you know, to the big epic movies we see today. It's come a long way.
Yeah, it really has. And, you know, throughout this conversation, it's really struck me how adaptations, they show the power of storytelling, but across different mediums. It's amazing how a story that might start on the page, it takes on a whole new life when it comes to the screen.
And you know, it's not just a one-way street either. I think adaptations can actually breathe new life into the original source material. A film can bring a classic novel to a whole new generation of readers, or, you know, maybe even spark new interest in a book that people have kind of forgot about.
It's like this cycle of creativity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Literature and cinema, they're always inspiring each other.
Exactly. For filmmakers, I think adaptations offer a really unique opportunity. They get to build on something that's already there. They can explore new perspectives, try different visual styles, bring those characters and worlds to life, you know, the ones that readers have only imagined in their heads.
And when it's done right, I mean, the impact can be huge. A good adaptation, it can get people talking, challenge how we see things, and stick with us long after we've seen the film.
Absolutely. It just shows you how powerful storytelling is. It crosses boundaries. It connects with us on this really deep level.
Speaking of powerful stories, you mentioned a book earlier that you'd love to see adapted. Can you remind us which one that was and why it caught your attention?
Oh yes, it's Dio Fagunwa's Ogbuju, Odninu, Igbo, Irinmo, a classic of Nigerian literature. It was published back in 1938.
Wow, just the title alone sounds so intriguing. Tell me more.
Well, it's this really captivating mix of myth, folklore, and fantasy. It takes you to this mystical forest, a whole kingdom filled with these supernatural creatures from Yoruba mythology.
It sounds like it would be visually stunning on screen. Has it been translated into English?
It has, yes. Wol Soyinka translated it as Forest of a Thousand Demons.
That's incredible. I can just imagine the visuals a filmmaker could create with a story like that. The costumes, the special effects, the whole world would be amazing.
It has all the makings of a truly epic film. You've got the richness of Yoruba mythology, the adventure, this clash between humans and the supernatural. It's a story that needs to be seen on the big screen.
I'm adding it to my reading list right now. And speaking of must-reads, let's hear from our listeners. Let's tap into their literary wish lists.
Good idea. One last question for the audience.
If you could make any book into a film, what would it be and why? Let us know in the comments. You never know, your suggestion could be the one that sparks the next cinematic masterpiece.
And remember, there are so many incredible stories out there just waiting to be discovered and brought to life on screen. Keep exploring, keep those creative juices flowing. Never underestimate the power of a good story.
Well said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into book-to-film adaptations. We hope you enjoyed it.
Be sure to check out other episodes of Successful Filmmaker for more conversations about the art and craft of filmmaking. We'll see you next time. Happy filmmaking.
Okay, cut. That's a wrap.